That would have been bad. Hi there. That would have been terrible. Okay, so I'm just going to back up just for a second a little bit. But the reason that I teach this method is because it's a whole different strategy of how you can change the perspective. So number one, I always talk about, consumers think that we are like the gum on their shoe, like we're used car salespeople. We're not, they don't think very highly of us in terms of our value sometimes. And so one of the things that can help change that is the art of storytelling. And then the other part is storytelling allows you to market your services and your business in a way that's unlike what other people are doing. Like all the other realtors around you want to put a picture of their face and put a static picture of the house. And that message is really just not received by many people. It's not interpreted as, ooh, I could see myself in that. When you tell a story of who you help, what challenges they overcome, and how you helped them overcome those challenges, now all of a sudden you're seen as the hero, and the story allows them to see themselves also in what happened. So they start considering like, oh, well, I have a similar problem or I have similar concerns. And when you see that someone else is struggling with the same thing or has similar problems, it's now relatable, right? What in the world? All right, let me get back to, I don't know what I did. I got a new computer finally, which is fantastic, but I touched a button, so there's that. Okay, you guys know who I am. I am Laura Dahl. I've been a realtor. I'm a second generation realtor. My oldest son is a third generation realtor, but I've been doing this for 25 years. I have been a broker in Virginia, South Carolina, Tennessee, and North Carolina. I have owned 2 real estate firms, and I operate a team in both North Carolina and Tennessee right now. And I am a growth coach for agents all over the country, helping them earn more money and run their businesses more effectively. Our purpose today is really to use storytelling to change the public perception of realtors. We want to show the depth of our value. We want to talk about what our value in the transaction is. We want to build connection and trust with our audience, and we want to highlight the impact that we have on the community. We want our clients to know, and the audience, the general public, to know that we don't just open doors. Opening the doors is only one of 183 things that I do from start to finish in any given transaction. So I need them to know that we're not just here to open the door for you. I'm here to help you do 182 other things. And the storytelling is going to help shed light on all of the other things that we do. So let's talk about why storytelling matters. Number one, it's super important because facts inform people, but stories move people to take action. Stories help people get in touch with the emotional side of buying a house. And if you've been in business any stretch of time, you know that people buy houses based on emotions, right? The house has to fit their criteria, but they just know sometimes when they walk in a house, it feels good. It feels special. And the storytelling is going to do the same thing for them. It's going to allow you to tap into their fears, their motivations, their concerns, and allows you to be the hero. Stories also build trust faster than any stats you could come up with. So I could go on about all the accolades that I have in my career, the thousands and thousands of homes that I've sold. I could give you stats on what my list price to sales price ratio is. I could tell you what my average sales price is. I could tell you what the average days on the market is, but that's not sexy to anybody. Nobody cares about any of that. It's not even important to most people. But the stories that I tell are relatable. Humans remember stories, they don't remember data. The other thing stories can do is they help build credibility. They help you, that you don't have to fight as hard to convince people of what that you're the right person to work with them, because, they already are you're already building trust with them from the get-go. I realized I wasn't even sharing my screen, and I have this really beautiful presentation that I've been showing you that you haven't even seen yet. That's all you can do is laugh at me, right? Let's see here. I was like, allow to share screen. Not this screen. I want to share this screen. Is the one I want. Can you see my pretty presentation now?
And it's a very pretty presentation.
Thank you. Okay. So it builds credibility, but it also means that you're not fighting with somebody to convince them that you're the right person. It's they've already read your stories. They already know how you've helped other people. They can see themselves in those stories and it becomes personal and relatable to them. It also positions you as the hero. It allows you to show up where they think of you and they already know that you're not just a door opener because they've read your stories. They know how that you've helped other people that are dealing with similar circumstances. It also shifts the way that they think about you. So when you're asking yourself, what kind of stories do I tell? You need to ask yourself, who had a transformation? Who came to you with a problem or a complication or a concern or a fear that you were able to get involved and help make that fear disappear? You helped make the whole thing happen. You helped it, you helped whatever the problem was go away. So think about what kinds of stories in your own business that you have. Who had a transformation that you had a hand in? What kind of stories were emotional or complicated? What kind of stories had a happy ending? I've got, and who do you still think about? So in my 25-year career, I still have clients that I know I played an integral part in changing their lives. And that sounds really like up in the clouds, like you're not that important. But by me selling their mobile home, they were able to, and it was the most expensive mobile home that's ever been sold in Beaufort County, by the way. They were able to sell that home and move to another area of South Carolina. They had a special needs son, and they were able to move to Columbia where they could buy a house in a neighborhood that had a school district that had way more resources for him. He was able to do a job work program that where we lived in Beaufort did not have. This family is today and will continue to be one of my biggest cheerleaders. I have not actually spoken to her since probably 2006, but she comments on every Facebook post I have. She tells everyone how I helped their family. She tells everyone how stuck that they were. If I had not helped them sell their mobile home for the amount that we did, they could have never been able to afford to move somewhere where they could get more support and services for their son. Those kinds of stories tell people like, hey, because here's the thing, Larissa, what do you think the number one thing people think about us as agents? What do they think?
We're just there to get the money.
Yes, that we're only in it for a paycheck. You hit it right on the head. That's what people think when they look at us because they see us cashing big checks. Most realtors who are successful drive fancy cars. They tend to be doing pretty well. Not the average realtor, but the above average realtor is doing really well. And people tend to think that we just make big checks and we're in it for a paycheck. They look at us as a salesperson. I don't look at myself as a salesperson. I happen to sell houses, but really what I do is way bigger than that. What I'm doing is helping people build long-term wealth through the purchase and sale of real estate. But the buying of the house is just one piece of the puzzle. Letting them into the house is one piece of the puzzle, right? I am taking a process that's very stressful. It is very scary. It can be overwhelming for people. And I am trying to help them navigate that with some sense of, comfort, knowing that they have somebody in their court that's going to hold their hand through the whole thing and is going to advise them so that they don't make mistakes. So the other part about storytelling is I want you to think about, who do you still think about? Who has a good story to tell? There are 5 powerful story types that I've given you here. One is a first-time homebuyer who's overwhelmed by the process. Maybe they've talked to 3 or 4 realtors, but they're more confused now than they've ever been. Maybe they're scared about the loan process. They've never bought anything this expensive before. Maybe you want to talk about a family that's navigating a major life changes. Sometimes that's a divorce. Sometimes it's a marriage of a blended family. Sometimes it's the death of a parent. Sometimes it's the death of a child. There are stories that impact all of us that we all can relate to. Are we telling those stories or are we just posting pictures of the front of a house saying, look what we did? That's not relatable. I don't see myself in that, especially if it's in a house that's in a price range that I can't afford. So if all you're posting are $1 million houses and my budget's really 450, can I see myself working with you? Because I didn't tell a story about someone that is relatable to me, right? Maybe a client buying or selling after a loss. We deal with this a lot. So unfortunately, I had a client in Mount Juliet, Tennessee, whose daughter passed away. And she held on to that house for about another decade after her daughter passed away. And she could not let go of the house because she had such an emotional attachment to it. There was a lot of trauma wrapped up in losing her daughter, and there were a lot of memories in that house. But holding on to the house was holding her back from growth. It was holding her back. It was also costing her financially. She could not afford to live in a new house with her new husband and still keep this old house. And it was actually hurting her. And so we were able to sell her house. But even telling the story of her was instrumental for me. I picked up 3 or 4 other clients because they understood the compassion that I had for a client who had lost their daughter and how I helped her navigate such an emotionally traumatic experience for her. And I was gentle and kind, and I was empathetic and also sympathetic to what she had lost there. And we were able to do a ceremony for her daughter when we closed on the house. Before closing, we were able to bless the house for the new family and pray for her daughter. Whatever, it was important to her. And that's what mattered. But by telling her story, I was able to show a side of myself to some potential clients that would not have known that about me otherwise. Because how else would they have learned that if I didn't tell her story? I like to tell a story of investors tackling a tough market. So again, there's lots of people that want to get in the investment market, but they're scared. They don't know. Maybe they've never been that kind of risk taker before. Maybe they don't know where their money's coming from for the investment. Maybe they're afraid that they're going to lose whatever collateral they're putting down on the loan. But helping, I tell stories of investors, and I usually tell stories of investors that win. So a lot of my investors will buy properties in the first phase of new construction as a great opportunity to get to build wealth quickly, because typically the builders are going to have 3 or 4 more price increases by the time they finish building out the subdivision. And so if you can get in on phase 1, you typically are going to get the lowest price that neighborhood has. So I tell stories of investors that took advantage of being some of the first houses in the neighborhood, and instantly, by the time they closed on their house, they had $100,000 worth of equity. I had another client that bought a house that took 2 years to build. And because it took 2 years to build, they had over $200,000 worth of equity because the market had changed so much in those 2 years. So again, it's telling stories that people can see, okay, maybe this could happen for me too. You guys know that I have been, unfortunately, a victim of several natural disasters. In Tennessee, we had the 500-year flood, and in North Carolina, we moved here and they have a hurricane in the mountains. Telling powerful stories of helping community members rebuild after a natural disaster. We have people here that have lost their homes. They've lost their land in landslides. They've lost family members, in that storm where we were recovering bodies from the river. There's so many things that we could talk about rebuilding and how we came together as a community, how we provided support, how we helped people who lost everything be able to find a new home. So, Larissa, right now when I'm telling you this, what's one story from your past clients that you think you could tell that would be kind of insightful or help somebody else?
Oh, the never ending one.
Yeah, that's true. Right. And how do you think that relates to most people? The never ending one.
Just the fact that the lender and trust your real estate agent.
Yes.
And their instincts.
Right. And sometimes they know best,
Yeah.
Sometimes they know the right people to work with and they know from experience, and sometimes you need to trust them and listen to them for sure. What I want you to do is be careful in choosing the stories that you tell. You definitely want to shine the light as you being the hero, but you also want to make sure that people can see themselves in the story, right? So, most people don't anticipate that the closing is going to get dragged on 2 months or 3 months or something like that. So that story may not have as far of a reach as a story that you tell about something that's very common that happens
Right.
all the time, right? Like, people already getting their house under contract and they go to write a contract on a new house that they're buying and the deal falls apart on the house that they buy. That's a fear that a lot of people have, might happen, right? So you just want to make sure you choose stories that are going to be relatable to the mass number of people, or stories like your story that sheds light on you as being the hero. Let me tell you how I helped. Let me tell you why you need me, right?
Right.
The structure of your story needs to be, who did you help, right? So I typically use names with people like, meet Chris and Esther. Chris and Esther were a 90-year-old and 92-year-old couple. And I told you guys all the story already, but their daughter basically kicked them out after agreeing to take care of them for the rest of their lives. She decided that she didn't want to do that anymore and told them that she was selling the house and they needed to move. And so now I had a 92-year-old that wanted to buy a house from me after his daughter kicked him out. That's not relatable to most people, but what was relatable was the fact that a 92-year-old needs help, right? They're going to need help. So I tell the story about how, yes, I helped them find a home. I made sure that they wanted to purchase a home. Why would you want to buy a house at 92? But he was very smart with his money and he knew what he wanted. And my role was actually to help them. My team showed up and helped them unpack their boxes. We helped them unload the moving truck. We helped them load the moving truck. We helped them get situated easier. We helped them get their utilities turned on. Things that a 92-year-old might need help with, right? So when I tell the story, I'm always going to start with the person, meet Chris and Esther, and they have names. I don't just say meet my buyers or meet my sellers. I give them a name because a name is more relatable. I explain the problem. Chris and Esther have been kicked out of their house and they had less than 30 days to find a new home. The process was that we explored other options and they decided this is what they wanted to do. But now we had to find a house that met their criteria, that was on a single level, didn't have a lot of stairs, it was in their price range, and it didn't have a lot of maintenance because they're 92 years old, right? The pivot is the problem that they had, right? Like it kind of goes back to the problem. Like, how did you help? What was the pivot is kind of what your role is. How did you end up stepping in, or what kind of resources did you provide them with? How did you save the day? And then the payoff is, what was the end result? The end result is that Chris and Esther now live about 10 minutes away from my son. My son stops in and has dinner with them. He tries to at least once a month. They're in their home. They have more peace now than they've ever had. And they are so grateful that we were able to help them buy a house, right? So you want to wrap the whole story up and tell them what the end result is, but you also want to make sure that they understand what your role was in it. Does all that make sense on the structure? Perfect. So an example of a story that I've posted in the past would be George and Faye. So George and Faye started with nothing. They worked really hard. They bought a home, they raised a family, and they helped their grandkids. Then the neighborhood changed. And this is a true story of my clients. The neighborhood changed and investors started circling around. They knocked, they sent letters, they filed complaints. They made life miserable for George and Faye. George and Faye held out. They didn't know where else they would go. They had raised their children and grandchildren now in this neighborhood. They had been a fixture in this neighborhood for 40 plus years. And they came to me. He actually worked at a Goodwill, and she worked at the local hospital. And he was the man collecting all the donations at Goodwill. And he was helping me get the things out of my car. And he said, "Miss Laura, are you still in real estate?" And I said, "Yes, sir, I am." He goes, "I know, I always see your signs in your car when you come drop stuff off." And he goes, "We want to sell our house, but we don't trust anybody anymore. And maybe you can help us." So I did. We sold their home at a great market price, more than what they thought they could get for it. They ended up buying a new home with cash. They paid off all of their debt and they reclaimed their peace. This was not just a real estate deal. It was a fresh start for them. They were no longer getting harassed. They weren't stuck about not knowing where to go. They didn't have to deal with codes violations daily. They had racist messages written on their car, on their front door. They had several realtors that had approached them and offered to help sell them, but they undervalued the house. We had a lot of flippers and wholesalers that tried to take advantage of them. And so they were skeptical. And I had to work really hard to earn their trust and to show them that I cared about the way that they were being treated and I wasn't going to put up with it. And so the goal is saying if you're feeling stuck too or harassed or unsure of your next step, I can help. So I want you to look at if I posted this with a picture of George and Faye, how much more momentum could I get or more, making a bigger impression than if I just posted the picture of the front of the house that George and Faye bought. You don't know anything about George and Faye. You don't know what kind of stuff they went through, right? And how I helped them. So I just wanted to give you that example. I want you to remember that you are more than a door opener. I want you to remember that you have a lot of skills that the common public does not have. You are a guide, you're an advocate, you are a protector, you're a consultant, you are a master negotiator. I want you to think of all of these words that describe what you do. One of your special skills is to reduce fear by giving them a source of comfort, by letting them know that they have an advocate on their side, that they have a consultant, they have a protector, they have a guide, and you are actually going to be in control of creating outcomes that produce results for them, outcomes that change their lives. The only way that we shift the perception of what people think about us is to change the way we do our business, of making sure that people know we don't just open doors. What are all the things that we are responsible for? What are all the things that could go wrong in a real estate transaction that we help keep on the rails, that we help make sure doesn't happen? Some of that is legal liability. Some of it is financial liability. Some of it is emotional problems. But you have a trusted person that's going to help you navigate that. And it's like you guys have heard me say too, you can cut your own bangs, you can do your own taxes, but should you? The goal is that you have someone on your side. You don't need to do it alone because I do it every day. I know what problems are going to come up. I know how to sidestep them. I know how to be proactive to make sure that they don't happen to you, right? So what we want to do is make sure that we are shifting the way people think about us. We want to shift the way that we tell our stories of the people that we help. I want you to work on painting a picture of yourself as a community connector, not just a salesperson. Your job is to connect families with the right houses, the right neighborhoods, the right areas, the right lifestyles. Your job is to help them navigate a very complex legal process with a lot of liability. Your job is to help them negotiate what is best terms for them on their behalf because they don't do this every day. They don't know what that's going to look like. Does all that make sense?
It does.
Yeah. Where to use your stories? I want you to start including your stories in your listing presentation. Definitely on your social media where you're posting things. I definitely want you to talk about stories when you go to a buyer or a seller consultation. I want you to tell stories. The other thing about storytelling is that if I tell a story of George and Faye to somebody that's in a similar situation, it now becomes relatable to them because they can see themselves in it. And you're demonstrating to them that you have experience. If I tell stories of Chris and Esther, I now have shown them how I've shown up for other people. It is not just a sale, a tick mark in the MLS that says I sold that. It is a family. It's a person. It is a human that I helped assist. I want it to be on your website bio or a blog or anywhere where somebody's going to look. When you get an opportunity to talk in public to people at events, tell a story. We have to start changing what people think about us. We have to start changing that they see us only as a door opener and as a used car salesperson, or that they see us as this person who's just in it for the money. And there's lots of in small, subtle ways that you can do that by making sure that you are putting your client's interest above your own. But you have to vocalize that. You have to verbalize that. And sometimes you don't have an opportunity to do that, but you can do it through storytelling for others after the fact. A couple tips I wanted to give you guys is that make it about the reader. What will they see in themselves in my story? Or do they have a similar fear? Do they have a similar feeling? Do they have a similar concern? Do they have a similar problem? Have they ever had a disaster happen before and they're already gun shy about it? If you would hone in on the feelings that they feel or how they would react in a situation and how you can be the savior, your stories will get a lot better. I definitely want you guys to start thinking of some stories that some people that you have represented and start formulating a story that you can tell just so that you can get it out. So think of any transaction that you have met and start telling that story. Start putting that story out there about how you helped. And I want you also to think about your story, Larissa, too, about the deal that never ended. The lender ended up being the way you tell the story. The lender ends up being more of the hero. And I want you to focus on how you are the hero, right? Because your network with the lender, your relationship with the lender helped save the client. But I want you to make sure that the people know what your skill set is. What can they expect from you? What kind of solutions do you have? How can you solve their problems? That is going to give you the best story that you can tell, is polishing that story, getting out all the details and highlighting yourself, how you want to be seen by people, how you want to be viewed by others. Does all that make sense?
It does.
Do you have any questions that I can answer? Because I went through that all kind of quick, but you're smart, so it's easy to do.
Yeah.
So I want you to think of a story. I want you to start fleshing out your stories, right? Like just start thinking of transactions that you've been involved in. Kind of go back to your brain about like kind of how they felt when they met you, or what they were scared of, or what they were worried about. And then how you helped solve the problem, or what the final result was with your help. And I want you to flesh out a couple of stories and then start promoting those. Okay. And just tell me how. I know you're going to see it because I know from experience, but I want you to feel what the reaction is when you start changing the perspective of people, because they think we are used car salesman scumbags. When you start telling stories, you'll see that people will start to relate to you in a different way. You'll see that people start to see you as a kind, compassionate person who's not just in it for a paycheck. That you care about the end result. You care about what happens to these people. And you have a vested interest in making sure that it happens well. That whatever problem that they're experiencing is no longer an issue. It's not a roadblock. And that's what I excel in. Crushing roadblocks that are in your way. Crushing all the negative things that you've told yourself about why you can't be a homeowner. My job is to remove those roadblocks for you. Right? And the more you start telling these stories about you as the hero and all the other things that you do that are way more important than just opening the door, the more you're going to get clients who trust you right off the bat. You don't have to work so hard to earn their trust. They already trust you because you've already given them social proof that you've helped other people with a similar problem. Okay? Thanks for being here today. I appreciate you showing up. I don't know where everybody else is, but I'm glad you were here. We personally invited over 1,000 people to this session, so I don't know, but I'm glad you were here nonetheless. Keep on hustling and working. I'm glad you're I definitely want to hear more about the conversation with Mike, but I'm going to stop the recording so that I can ask you about that. Okay. Let me stop this real quick.